Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. So we thought we would just jump ahead a little bit. It's not really jumping ahead because we're at the end of November, right? So we're coming into the last month of the year. And as we have so many exciting things coming next year, we were talking about, let's talk about our end of year perspectives today, since it's sort of the last day of November. And then December, we can talk about all this exciting stuff and, start a whole new cycle before we start a whole new cycle kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. It's closure week, while next week is prep week for the new.
Yes. And very exciting stuff. Very exciting stuff. So good morning, Sandra. So, we've had a year, and this all started with this whole couple of things. One thing we were talking about last week was this whole, we have people who are on both ends of the spectrum when we talk about the holidays and the holiday season, right?
Right.
So you get excited because in a way it gets cozier, you have a lot of social gatherings. Good morning, Anne. You have a lot of social gatherings, around meals and, a lot of comfort stuff and whatever. So it feels loving and nourishing. And then on the other end, you have people who connect the holidays with loss.
Right. Emptiness.
And voids or lack and stuff like that.
Right.
And so, even what Sarah and I were talking about on Friday was how it's great to hold the memory, right, in sentiment, but it's limiting when we become prisoner to it.
Right. Or trapped in the cycle of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I've always loved. I've always loved fall, and I've always loved the winter and the changing of, from the oppressive heat of the summer, and it's like such a relief. And for some reason this year I wasn't feeling it. I was feeling the heaviness to it. And I had recalled my mother talking about how everybody she ever loved died in the fall, and I had never experienced that in growing up around her, to see that sadness set in. And so I thought, well, maybe it's just the sadness of where she is in her life. But I found some of that kind of settling in for me, and I was like feeling similar to, oh gosh, here we go, everything's gonna die, just to regrow and come back in the spring and do it again.
And that's the heaviness, though, when you look at it, right?
It just seemed so repetitive and so heavy and so, gosh, do we have to do this again?
Yeah.
Do we really have to do this again?
Yeah. And it was funny because I was sitting with that, right? And then I have others around me, there's a good morning, Gloria. There was a group around, there was an online community that my husband and I are part of, and we did a toast on Thanksgiving evening at 10 o'clock, whatever. And it was, the person who started was like, oh yeah, they were talking about, their father who died. And then it became this sob fest of everybody who lost people and everything else. And it's not that is bad to honor who those who've transitioned out, but it's also, but it is limiting when we hold on to mourning or grieving or sadness about it. It's to me, it was so foreign. It was funny because I was like, oh, well, this is sweet, except I don't feel the need to jump in and be sad, because I'm not sad about all the people who've died in my life. I am thankful for having had them in my life. I'm thankful for what they provided me. And the way I look at it and the way I honor them is like at Thanksgiving dinner, we'll sit and talk about some of this funny, crazy, bizarre family things that used to happen and stuff like that, but always with laughter and joy and love, and not a sadness of whatever. So I felt that pervasive, and that's when it was in my face. Right. And I'm going, well, why does this feel so heavy, unusually heavy to me?
it's a commentary on where we are when a person lives. Like, for instance, my mother, just an example, was here 90 years. And for me to only remember like the last 6 months of her life and have that be all consuming and say, yep, I'm sad because she died and these 6 months were her illness, versus let's celebrate those, 89.5 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Anne says, I totally agree. They stay with you always in spirit. Lost both of my parents before I was 30. Yeah, I know, Anne. That's
Yeah.
And it's a matter of coming to this place of gratitude for what they had, like as we become conscious and stuff, what they had provided in our realities, and knowing that it was done and whatever. Yeah. And you're right. They're always with you no matter what. Anyway, it's like, that's what I always laugh about, is like my perspective as well. It's not like they really go anywhere.
Exactly.
Except their physical vessels are gone.
Right.
So, I mean, my experience has been, yeah, nope, I get to see my grandparents whenever they feel like visiting. So my dad and whoever. Yeah. I mean, we have so many people in both my husband and my families that have passed, and people I've known and all that kind of stuff. And so but the thing is, when you look at the bigger picture on that, right, it's how we still look at the death of things.
Right. Exactly.
And we still see them as a negative thing versus a letting go thing, right? So this year feels, I think, unusual. There's an undertone. So there's two different parts to me, and that we were talking about, that we both felt, right? Which one was like, I'm ready for the holidays. I'm ready to to just be present and excited and grasp like what's coming next and everything else. And yet then there's this really heavy undertow, right? That's trying to pull at me, that feels so collective. And it was like, well, we were poking around. Of course, then we started poking around at it.
Right, of course.
And really it has to do with, we have put to death a lot of things over the past 2 years, collectively.
Right. And the question is, can we let them stay dead?
Yeah. Can we just let them die? Because
can we let it go?
And that came into this conversation that Sarah and I were having about so many that we know, including ourselves. We both have had huge transitions and changes in our personal lives this year, and all expansive ways, if not uncomfortable in many moments. But but I look at it as, oh my God, I'm so happy it came up to go, right? Pervading, habits that didn't serve the bigger picture, right? And things that I become so blind to, because we become so blind to habits.
Right.
That basically my expanded self says, nope, this year we're going to pick them up one at a time. We're going to shake them off. You're going to put it right in your face, see what it's there for, and then let it go.
Right. Put it under that personal microscope.
Yes. And so, we have both had that. And so and the thing is, I see this with so many we know, so many clients, students, friends, acquaintances who have had huge changes, and yet they're trying to hold on to old ideas of how these changes are supposed to be. And that, my friends, is the heaviness that we feel underneath the undertow.
Right. And that compounded with the fact that, as we see the season cycle, and we used to find comfort in the repeat, knowing that, just get through the winter and then the rebirth of spring will be there. But at the same time, we're going, okay, so I've gone through all this, and am I just going to cycle back around? Am I just going to come right back around and repeat it?
And so many people are trying that. They're like, oh no, I can't wait to go back to this. I can't wait to go back to this. And it's like, no. No more going back. No.
Right.
Just let it go. Like, okay, we have given ourselves 2 years of an opportunity to create a blank slate and move forward in a different way. And so what has come up in the changes that many have had this year, or the opportunity for change, has been repeating of old cycles, repeating of something that might not have even been in your life for a long time that came up, but it's come up to do it differently.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even if it's just your mindset around it.
Exactly. In a more conscious manner, a more self-observant manner. Yeah.
Have more gratitude for the set of circumstances instead of, torturing yourself over it. Must be true. Must be relevant. True. Right. There's so many different ways to do it different.
Yes.
And we tend to look at it in my mind in absolutes, like, oh, well, that means I can't do that at all.
Right.
Maybe it's just your mindset towards it. Maybe it's just your unconscious judgment towards it. So many things can factor into doing it differently.
Right. And I believe that there are many of us who've gone through so much change or been pushed into, like seeing things so differently, right? That the whole collective pull of let's cycle back is oh, hell to the no. We are moving forward on this now.
Right.
And so that's the sort of friction we're getting, I think, collectively and individually, because what our habit is this: change is only as uncomfortable as the ego wants it to be. Right.
Right. And it's the only constant in the universe.
Right. Exactly. Change. Exactly. And that's when they don't realize there is nothing that doesn't change in the universe except the wholeness itself.
Right. And the minute you stop changing or you choose is really, that's when death begins here, is when you stop changing and evolving and expanding and learning and growing and flowing, because change doesn't allow for that.
Yep. And then you just become crusty. And then what happens is the universe says, okay, well, we're just going to break this up because the change is flowing, whether you want to or not. Right. So then you leave the physical body, all kinds of stuff like that. Oh, Sarah just froze up. Sarah, you just froze. I think I did too. Oh, no. I'm still here. Can anybody? Yeah, then you stagnate, Gloria says. So I think we're still going. I'm going to keep on going. Hopefully Sarah gets back in a moment. But yeah, and so what we tend to do with change is that we do one of two things. The ego becomes so uncomfortable with it that it actually it fights it so badly that it then becomes into a survival mode of, how do I alleviate the symptoms of the change to allow myself to just get through this moment? And then, well, that's so funny that Sarah froze up right in the middle of this. I'm going to text her and see if she realizes that. I'll be right back here. Still frozen. Okay, so what the ego will do is it says, I'm going to hold on, that's Sarah texting me back. Okay, she's going to leave and come back. Okay, good. So why is this now being a pain? Here we go. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so then you're saying, so what happens is this: we get into a place This is so weird. I still see her frozen, even though she said she left. Okay, this is so weird.
Oh, so I'm up here twice.
There,
There it goes.
okay. Yeah, I was like, okay, now I see Sarah twice. That was bizarre.
Yeah, no, I could hear you and I could see that I was frozen, and I kept switching networks to see if that would change it. So I figured it was
Okay.
just the connection. But anyway,
Okay. Yeah, I'm watching it happen.
resistance to change.
I know. I was like, funny that we're talking about like, then you freeze up and then it's like, okay, the universe says, I'm going to just break you up.
Right.
So, anyway, what I was saying, I started saying, and then I was like getting distracted because I'm like, what happened? Sarah didn't come back. Because usually, like, if it freezes for a moment, it'll come
Right.
back. So the thing with change is this. I'm going to repeat myself again. The ego becomes really uncomfortable with change. So then it gets into this mode of, how do I manage this so that I am the least uncomfortable, right, while this is going on? But it's a very short-term, short-sighted perspective, because it's usually the ego saying, I am just going to put all my efforts to alleviating the symptoms of my change, of this change, right? And I'm going to try to do what I can so that the discomfort goes away.
Right.
And usually
Exactly.
what the ego usually means with that is throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying, so I'll pretend that I'm going along with this change, but I'm really just temporarily allowing it. And then I'm going to try to fight to go back to how it was.
Right.
And so that's how a great example for that many don't see or understand is when we talk about things like weight loss, right? Like weight loss, or when we change our bodies, when we change relationships, right?
Right.
Because like it's a big thing, something I was thinking about over the weekend, because, a lot of people have the jokes about overeating during the holidays and stuff like that. And you and I went through the whole Noom thing this year, and
Right.
and that was a great app because it really worked through the psychology of your consciousness around eating. And when I went into, I'm ready to go to the weight that I would like to be again. Right.
Right.
You and I were talking about it, and it was like, we just want to do what's going to be sustainable and real change, and not something that's just going to bounce back like a yo-yo after we're done. After we're done, right? Because the ego says, okay, I can deal with this for a short period of time. And that's what we do with things like weight loss is, okay, I'm going to do this diet and put a crash diet or eat this way until I lose this weight. And then I'll just go back to normal.
Then I can go back to the way I want to be.
Right. Instead of realizing there's a reason the way you were was dysfunctional and not optimally functional to begin with. And when, it's a matter of looking at how you view every element that has to do with that change. So why do I eat? How do I eat? When do I eat? Like, for what reason do I eat? And do I take notes? And like, in the things, that's what Noom was great about, was going through all of this of, why do I eat? Why am I eating this? What does my body feel like now? If I'm 2/3 of the way through this, am I really full now and still eating because I was taught to clean my plate? Am I doing this because it's comfort? Am I doing it because I'm bored? Am I doing it because it's social? And, I can't stop eating before somebody else, like things like that we don't realize we have built in. And so I'm not even looking at at the holidays. So many people are like, oh, I'm afraid to get on the scale. And I'm like, why? Because I'm not changing the way I eat just because of the holidays. I'm still being just conscious about my behavior, and my whole experience and relationship with food has changed due to all of those changes. And I don't feel like I'm going to be, oh, well, I'm going to want to go and sit and eat 4,000 cookies because it just doesn't feel good to me anymore. Like, it doesn't feel good, to want to do anymore.
It's not who you are anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and if we took that kind of approach, oh my, am I freezing up again?
You are randomly, but you're still coming through.
If I take that approach with everything that I come across that I have resistance to or am uncomfortable with, and look at it from the perspective of, why am I doing this, and how am I doing this, and how am I really feeling, and really pick it apart, not just strive to feel more comfortable with it,
Right.
or to
Because
numb
eventually,
myself,
go ahead.
to the point where I don't feel it anymore.
Right. Well, because once you look at why you're doing something, right,
Right.
and you change that habit, then the new habit becomes comfortable.
Right.
It's like,
Slow motion.
yeah, I know. It's like you're on a strobe or something. But so that's the thing for us to look at, because so many people are like, oh, I can't wait for things to go back to normal and things like that. And it's like, no, we're not going back. The thing is to look at, what did we do that did not serve us? What did we do that was continuously limiting? What did we do that was unconscious in our lives every day, that we have forced ourselves into a pattern of change to eliminate? And instead of saying, oh, I miss being able to do this, why was that so comfortable? Ask yourself, why was that so comfortable?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And what does that discomfort say about what I believe to be normal? So, I believe that that's all I deserve, or I believe that I should be punished, or I believe that I'm not worthy of that. And I mean, that's where we tried to come up with our 7 courses.
Yes. Yep. And that's what we looked at in creating the Adventures in Wonderland program that we have. The last program launched this month, the last course of the program launched this month. It's not going away. In fact, we have a whole community planned and really awesome stuff planned for next year to do with it. But the 7 areas that we covered, that caused, well, and I'm so grateful for, because it caused you and I both huge amounts of discomfort in our personal lives in creating the course.
Yes, right, exactly.
But was worthiness, trust, guidance, forgiveness, self-responsibility, shadow, and loving the shadow, and then self-love, right? Was that 7? Did I hit them all? I think so.
I believe you did.
Yeah. And so when we hit all of those and get to a place of comfort and resolution in all of those areas, then we hit that wholeness. We hit that, presence of anything can change right now.
Right.
And I am worthy to be able to handle it. I trust it. I listen to my guidance about it. I forgive anything that felt bumpy about it. I take self-responsibility in the creation of my reality. I see and embrace and have gratitude for the shadow part of it. And I do it all in self-love. Everything we do can be connected that way.
And on top of that, everything we do is a form of nourishment to ourselves.
Yes.
Which just, I mean, it's such a complete cycle, and it's so self-fulfilling. Even if you feel that you're not in a good place, you're still nourishing yourself in the way you feel you need to be nourished in that moment, whether it's for the message, whether it's for the forgiveness, for the worthiness, whatever. But it all just, it hits every point to bring you to that place of coming to where you are.
Yes. Yes. And if we create a new foundation so if we actually change and let go of all that stuff, and yes, it's a lot of stuff, right? 20 on the average of 28 elements per course, right? I think there was one that was 29. So that comes out to just under 200 items across the board, 200 items that we looked at in our faces this year, right? And yeah, it's daunting and uncomfortable to the ego, because especially when you start on that roll, because you just keep on changing. But it's all stuff that builds a new foundation, because once we resolve all of those pieces, we can deal with whatever's given to us. We can deal with whatever we create. We can create from such a different place of wholeness, right? And then it doesn't matter what the world looks like around us. We have had the opportunity, we've given, and I said this, well, you and I have said this all last year, especially last year, because so many people were locked down and stuff, is look at the opportunity we've given ourselves to look inside, and look at how many ignore that.
I know exactly.
And so they get more opportunity to do that as we still have stuff, that cause minor lockdowns and whatever.
Right.
And as we, how do we tell we've changed is the more we go, the more we don't allow external circumstances to shake us anymore.
Or dictate our behaviors.
So it does not, so nothing can throw us into fear. Nothing can throw, except the recognition that it's ourselves.
Right.
So in closing out this year, really the key point to all of this is getting to this place of that solid foundation of letting go, of trusting the letting go, even if it's stuff that you had no concept was like, that you did not consciously have any understanding was important to go, right? And it could be, like I said, not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but it's this idea of, I am doing this now. Okay, I'm doing this. So like relationships, right? People get out of one relationship and into another.
Only to repeat the same habits.
Only to repeat the same habits. Right. And usually faster and more intensely, because the expanded self is like rolling its eyes going, come on. It's important for us. Let's get past this now. And we get so then we have to look, then it's important for us to look underneath that and say, well, what are we afraid of? What am I afraid of by letting this pattern go in a way that might be better for me in the long run,
Yes, absolutely.
And a lot of times it's that whole fear of being alone, fear of whatever, like all that kind of stuff.
Fear of being unlovable.
Right.
Fear of letting go.
Right. And so, I have had conversations with multiples over the weekend who have gotten to a place of what we call like analysis paralysis, right? But also like being so fear-based, have gotten so fear-based that they just shut down and they stop living.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing, is I'm like, you know what? It goes down to that fear of death is fear of death is bigger than the desire to live.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is what we're being faced with. So you can poo-poo this or yes it to death and, oh no, everything's fine and whatever. But moving forward, nothing is going to be small anymore. So anything that hits us, we've given ourselves this 2 years, and now it's like, okay, it's okay. If you're not looking at it now, it's got to be so big, it's got to clunk you over the head.
Right.
And that's where the inner work and all of that stuff is so important. But the thing is really to look at the changes of what you're doing is, am I changing just to change? Am I changing just to make myself more comfortable and fitting into a definition that I don't know that I believe, that I'm supposed to, right? Or am I fighting that definition or fighting what that change is? Like I said, the easiest thing to think about is when people talk about losing weight, and they always talk about it right after the holidays, and they go into that whole thing, because then it's like, oh, I'm going to do this better, right? We come to the new year, we do this better. I'm going to do this better this year. I'm going to, lose whatever. I'm going to join a gym, blah, 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 because those are the things that I understand are going to make me healthier, even if I hate them. Instead of, why do I hate it? Why do I hate the idea of being healthy? Why do I hate the idea of not having my body as a distraction to limit me?
Yes.
Right. So the same thing in relationships, the same thing in our jobs. Where do we hold ourselves in a place of I'm doing this, I'm going to do this better. Oh, I'm going to be a better worker. I'm going to, commit myself better. But it's like, but are you assessing, am I passionate about what I'm doing? Do I love getting up every day? Have I found my passion in life? Are we ever looking at that?
Right.
Right.
No, it's that. All I want to do is make the symptoms go away. I want to keep doing the same thing I'm doing, but I want to feel good about it.
Exactly. I want to convince myself it's all good.
Right.
Which, it is in all reality, because everything's perfect. But, the question, the fact of the matter is it really just a bigger picture thing you're avoiding or distracting yourself from by putting all your energy into
Right.
something that doesn't really serve the bigger picture? And that's where we start getting into that holographic view. We can talk about, ascension codes, and we can talk about, activations, and we can talk about things till we turn blue in the face. But if you have no idea how it applies in our everyday lives, then it's just not going to do anything but get us more detached from the fact that we are here in the hologram, in these embodiments, to fulfill that symphony that we are creating.
Right.
And yes, that is definitely a part of us to remember. It's beautiful and fun to play in and everything else. And that is the key, is turning around and saying, okay, well, so how does that apply in me living life here and now?
Right. Yep.
And how does that apply to, I have a chronic condition in my body that I still haven't changed? Is it just easier to accept it and alleviate the symptoms with, medications? Or can I actually look at this and change it?
Right.
Or does it serve me to look at this and change it? Or, and usually the ego goes, oh yeah, that's just way too uncomfortable, right? Because that would mean I'd actually have to look at stuff and make change for real.
Right. I'd have to unwind and unravel and untangle, most of my life.
Yes.
To look at this.
And we've known people, both of us know people who are questioning all that right now, going, oh, well, I just don't want to look at that anymore. I just don't want to have to look at my triggers. Right?
Yes. Right.
I'm going to choose, and that's okay. That's okay. But the thing is, it's like, that's the self-responsibility to take, is I just don't want to look at my triggers, and I would rather just float along in a state of ignorant bliss, which is what you're
right. Which, that's the one thing in coming to that place of self-love, is you realize that everything you do comes from that place of self-love. Yes. And that even if it's something that you're uncomfortable with, it really is from that place of self-love to be like, hey, look at this. Hey, over here, look at this. And if you don't listen, it's like, gets louder and more pecking you on the shoulder, because it is self-love, and there's only a certain amount of time that you can deny it.
Right. And so if it's easier to imagine it as like somebody who loves you unconditionally, like think about a child and a parent, or whatever, right? Somebody, a really close friend, who then is like, hey, you got that, you got the spot here. Hey, you got the spot. It's starting to get bigger. It's starting to grow and mutate. Hey, and it's like, oh yeah, no, that's okay. I don't want to hey, and that's like, and so you laugh at that, right? Or like a mother going, oh no, take that shirt off, change that shirt. Look at that spot. It's growing. It's coming alive, right? It's whatever. It's going to take over, and it might hurt you. And so like we would listen to somebody else eventually, usually because they would get loud enough of like, or we would find ourselves in a place where we have completely gotten sick from something or whatever, to change that, right? Well, that's really the voice of our expanded self, right? Our expanded self is going, hey, okay, you played this out. We played this out. Now let's change this. We played this out, and we can do something. You know what? I'm only doing because I love you. I only love you. I like it. All I
Right.
can do is love you because you're me.
Right.
And I see once we let go of that sweater that has the growing alien mold on it and mutating, once look at how much distraction it's taken for you to try to ignore it and, put
And
spot
accommodate
cleanse.
it.
What was that?
And accommodate it. All the
Right.
accommodations we've come up with to just
Right.
put up with it.
Yes. And look at all that stuff you're doing to ignore it. And if you actually take off that sweater and just change your sweater, look at all these other things that we would be doing that would be so much more fun,
Right.
so much more expansive. And so when we say it like that, it seems like, well, of course we would say that, but we do it all the time with ourselves, all the time.
So I'm bringing this back to the whole cycle things, which is what we started with, is that is how you do it different.
Mhm.
That is how you change it. That's how you ensure that those things that you've worked through and shifted and changed are who you really are.
Yes.
To work through it from this perspective and to get to that place to where you know that the changes, within your heart, within yourself, that this is who you are now, that you've made those changes and you've come to this new place.
Yes. And you're allowing it.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And
And
believe
that,
me, it's so much more free. Yeah.
right. And that allows the rebirth coming in the spring to actually be a birth, not a rebirth of what we've already worked through, but to be in that expansion and that flow.
Right. Right. So let's embrace the change and do it differently. Let go of these things. And it is, yes, it is distressing to the ego because yes, it does take away our discomfort. It does take away things we're very comfortable with.
Right.
But then it also opens up the possibility, like in endless possibilities that we would not have allowed otherwise, because we've had so many distractions, so many habits that limit us, that stand in our way. And we're the only ones to stop ourselves. We are the ones who get in our own way. What we create in our realities. Yeah.
That's right.
And all the things that we create to make ourselves a victim of and everything else. It's our choice to either accept that, limit ourselves until the explosion happens from the expanded self, or we just allow it and then say, well, let me see. Wait and see. Let me try this one little thing. And what does that look like if I really change it instead of just change it to alleviate what I think is what I'm supposed to do? That's a very fine line. That's very hard for many to distinguish. So,
Right. Yes.
So, okay. So what's our creation then for today?
I always like to start with just simply recognizing where we're settling in our changes and waiting for the comfort to set back in. And just have that increased awareness.
Yeah, I would also ramp it up to say, I am, let me feel that out. I am worthy to, I always like doing that. I'm worthy to remember how to allow myself to, see what's there, remember what there is to change, see it as it is in observance and self-love.
Gratitude.
Have gratitude for it, accept it, or we can just do the whole thing that we did in, in the self-love class, right? Which is saturate it all with worthiness, with trust, with guidance, clear guidance and forgiveness, self-responsibility, embracing and having gratitude for the shadow, and in a place of self-love to know it was all been perfect. And then in that saturation to let it all be complete and let it go.
Yeah.
And give ourselves the open road to change in a true sense, in And instead of cycling in a way that is bringing forward the baggage from yesterday, instead, let's spiral outward and expand into new places. Like that's, so for me, it's from taking to a circle to a spiral,
Right.
and letting it be fun and enjoyable and vibrantly healthy and all that kind of stuff. Abundantly prosperous. I always throw that stuff in there. All right. So
Let's do that.
yeah, let's do that. All that in a nice little bow. Happy holidays.
Right.
So let's close our eyes, open our hearts as we take a deep breath. Step out of separation, back into wholeness and oneness. And we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we create, experience, and exist. All right.
It was busy.
It was
very
busy. It was busy. I was like, I don't know how long. Are we out here for a long time? Were we out for a long time? Or was that quick? Because I can't tell the difference. It was a lot of stuff. It was like, well, that whole freneticism we've talked about, like of the cell, the molecules right before they change form, right? And
Yeah,
how they get agitated. And it was like so much agitation that it was like, okay, but now for them to change form is for them to let go of the form that they were in,
yes,
they could take
yes,
on a new one.
yes.
So then it was like, oh, I feel all that. And it's like, and then I was getting up and it's like, okay, just let go. And then it was like all these little like molecules are like, I'm free, I'm free. It was sort of funny. And I was like, okay, so all that within me and as the collective, all the same. Let's
Right.
just do that. So it sort of felt like little bubbles popping, which was really cool. We need to go back and sit with that. But yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of acknowledgement of honoring someone else's journey as that's their version of self-love, and how that doesn't necessarily have to be reflective in your journey,
Right.
and how that's, yeah, that was really, that's one of those changes that I've embraced, and seeing how that is actually a loving quality versus I don't care quality.
Right. Right. Well, and that's what many culturally believe, right? And it's an I
Right.
don't care quality versus a no, I actually do that with love quality
Right. Yes.
while honoring my own journey at the same time.
Absolutely.
Hmm. All right. Well, we have a lot that we're going to be starting to talk about out here. Very excited for this month coming up,
Yeah.
as well as the year ahead. So stay tuned with us and we'll see you next week. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Siga Evignoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.